Okay, hi, I'm Elena Armburst. I want to welcome everybody who's on today for our first ever Mom Summit for health conscious moms, caregivers, dads, all the above. We are a little mom focused right now. Everyone on your team today presenting is a mom themselves. We've all had tremendous results healing our little babies' guts and bodies. And so we're really excited to share some awesome and valuable information with you today. I want to just make a note of the time and that we want to be really conscientious of your time because we know how busy mamas are. We're going to keep this right at 35, 40 minutes. We will stay on a little bit longer at the end in case anybody has any questions or you just want to add some valuable information you may have. But first, I'm going to introduce your presenters. First, we have Gigette Webb. If you'd like to give a wave, Gigette, so everybody knows who your beautiful face is. She is our educational contributor. She's a published co-author and a former educator and franchise owner of a Kumon Math Reading method facility. So there's Gigette. Next up, we have Michaela Morell. She's a Swedish nutritionist. Oh, there we are. You can see everybody's beautiful faces. She's our Swedish nutritionist currently living here in sunny, beautiful Arizona. She's also the brain child behind Food Changes Lives, and she promotes amazing omega-3 education. She's actually the creator of a Facebook group that has over 5,000 followers and contributing members. It's called We Share Experiences, so I encourage you to look that up if you get a chance. That's Michaela. I don't know if she gave a wave so you can see who she is. And then to round it out, we have Katie Turner. She is an author and child development expert. She has over 700,000 followers on her blog, Preschool Inspirations, another amazing tool to have in your mom toolboxes. She's also the creator of Peaceful Potty Training Methods. So lots and lots of wellness info and education about to be presented to you. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll keep an eye on them. We'll get you the info that you're requesting. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Gigette. She's going to get us started with some information on why we're doing this in the first place. So Gigette, take it away.
Thank you, Elena. So one of the things I'd like to start with is some statistics. So if you could see here on our next slide, we have an increase of autism prevalence. And so one of the things as an educator is this is concerning to me, and I've seen it in my circles with my teacher friends, and I've worked with many students, and I've noticed an increase as well. Worldwide, currently, the rate is 1 to 44. So one person in 44 will have autism, and you can see how it is grown significantly. Then the reason we're talking about this is it all ties into our health. And so the next slide that I'd like to share with you is one about diabetes. And so we've noticed that type 2 diabetes has been increasing, all diabetes, but type 2 specifically has been increasing with younger and younger age people. It's been diagnosed with people younger and younger. So these are some things to be thinking about, and I'm sure you've seen it too in your families and friends as well. All right, the next slide that I'd like to share with you is one, and this information, I was first introduced to it by Dr. Paul Clayton. Dr. Paul Clayton is a well-known pharmaconutritionist, and he has done lots of research on different populations and their nutrition habits. But one of the things that he shared, and this really stuck with me, so this is one of my Dr. Paul takeaways, is that decade over decade, intelligence scores are decreasing. And so as a teacher, I mean, that has always stuck with me, and I wonder why. What's going on? This is not a good trend. You can see things going up, IQ going down. Now, there are many contributing factors to this. One could argue, yes. But one of the things that Dr. Paul promotes is the nutrition aspect. And so that's one of the things that Michaela is really going to educate us on about today. But let's take a look at the next slide. The next slide is about our diet. And so one of the things that you've noticed, and maybe this is a contributing factor, you're certainly hearing a lot about it today, is that the increase of seed oils in our diet. And does it have an effect? Hello, I've got little ones here. The next slide that I'd like to share is one about sugar. And so could some of these issues also be related to the increase of sugar intake? So we take a look at this, and this is one of the things that Michaela is going to help educate us about, because really we have to take responsibility for our nutrition and our health. And if you stay on later, I would be happy to share my personal story with what Elena is, or with what Michaela is teaching us about today. Okay, I think that's all the statistics I want. Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Michaela.
Thank you so much, Gigette, for that. Yes, having all the different people getting sicker and sicker in younger ages is definitely something we should be concerned about, and we should start asking ourselves the question, why? Why is it that diseases that used to be old people diseases are now coming down? So people that are less than 30 years old catches those diseases. So we're going to talk a little bit more about gut health, because that was our focus for today. We're going to have 2 other summits as well, where we will target other areas. But I want to educate you guys about our gut. That is our first brain. So when we are in our mother's wombs, the gut starts to form before the brain even starts to develop. So that is why they often talk about the gut being our first brain, because it develops first. The gut and brain have very strong connection, often referred to as the gut and brain connection, which influence various aspects of health and wellness, and include, and our children is also affected by this, depending on how we as mother are feeling. So that is also one of the reasons why we can see generations become sicker and sicker in younger ages too, because they start out with worse gut health than the mom have, because we keep on decreasing the amount of good and bad, good bacteria, and we're having more bad bacteria, but we'll come into that a little bit later. But what is happening in our gut is directly affecting our brain. So if we're seeing a big incline of development issues with our kids, with concentration and so on, we often see a big correlation with the microbiome, that we have a lot less of the good gut bacteria. So what is happening in the gut directly affects us. And they do it by various different channels. We have the vagus nerve, we have hormonal channels, we have immune pathways, and so on. So there's different ways it's communicating with our brain. But it is important to look at our gut when we're struggling with our brain. A lot of doctors will just find a pill and try to solve it that way, but that is not usually the solution for... I always ask people this: if you're having headache, do you think you're having a headache because you're lacking ibuprofen in your body? And of course, it's not because you're lacking ibuprofen. So what are you lacking? And that is what we need to figure out. We need to figure out how we can create better circumstances for our body to function more optimally. So in our children, the gut and brain connection plays a crucial role in several areas, including our neurodevelopment. And the reason why it plays such a big role in the neurodevelopment is simply because the gut microbiome, it interacts with the developing brain during critical periods of early life. So the interactions can impact the growth and maturation of our nervous system and potentially affect cognitive function and behavior and emotional development. So it's super important to have that in place. And then our mental health, how it affects that is simply because when we are struggling with gut health issues, we're often struggling with something called leaky gut. And when things are leaking out in our bloodstream and comes up to our brain, we will have misfiring communication up in our brain. It will be fighting, it will not be feeling good. And that is usually why we're struggling with anxiety, depression, mood, sleep, and so on in the first place. So we need to really look into the gut health also when we're looking at the mental health. Then we have the immune system modulations. If you're struggling with a kid that have poor immune system, you definitely need to look into gut health and leaky gut. Then nutrition, absorption, metabolism. The biggest thing the most important role the gut have is to, of course, absorb. Sorry, I am stumbling on my English day. Everyone knows I'm a Swedish nutritionist, but I only slept for like 3 hours last night because I had a dog that was not feeling great. So excuse that. But it needs to be able to absorb all the nutrients we need and bring it out into our system so that we can utilize the nutrients we're eating. And then the inflammatory response. If we're struggling with low-graded inflammation, that is causing harm to our body. Almost all health issues starts with low-graded inflammation. So we need to take a look at the inflammation levels as well as we are targeting our gut health. So in our gut, we have about 100 trillions of bacteria living inside of us. And they are both good and bad. But when we are first born, our gut, we don't have these bacteria naturally. We have a pretty sterile environment when we're first born, because what is creating all of these bacteria is things we are subjected to. And that is the main reason why, for example, a small baby can't handle solid foods right away when they get out into the world. Of course, they cannot handle it because they don't have any teeth, but they were created without teeth to only nurse until they were able to chew food, because it have a correlation with our gut development and when we are getting our teething. So, of course, you could try and mash down food, but as long as the kid doesn't have the teeth, they are not mature in their gut to handle food either. So most of baby's gut microbiota is acquiring during the birth, and it's the first few days of life through breastfeeding. And colonization of the gut begins when the baby encounters microorganisms from the mom's vagina during the birth, and continuously as the baby suckles on the mom's breast and the skin, and also getting the bacteria that have been leaking out in the breast milk to the baby. Infants can also acquire gut bacteria later on through the environment, and we will talk more about that. Because the gut never stops to change. Okay, it changes all the time, and it's dependent on our lifestyle and our diet. And this is actually good news, because you might be sitting there now thinking that having a little bit of guilt, maybe. I know that there are a lot of mothers that might have needed a C-section. They might have needed antibiotics while they were pregnant, causing them to not have any good gut bacteria to transfer over to the baby. You might have been struggling with not being able to nurse or having a C-section. Or maybe your baby needed antibiotics. But there is plenty of time for you through diet and lifestyle to help your baby get better microbiome in their gut. So even if we haven't been able to maybe take those opportunities to do it from the start, we can do a lot right now for our kids. And if you're planning to become pregnant in the future, it's really important too to have this knowledge. So maybe we do a little bit extra and seek a little bit extra help whenever we are struggling with, for example, nursing. And here I just want to put out a reminder too. I'm from Sweden, I'm from Scandinavia, and I can promise you the diet looks very different to what we think is okay to feed our kids from Scandinavia to United States. And I just want to put out a reminder that a lot of the bad gut bacteria and the parasites living inside of us, they thrive on sugar. They thrive on a lot more things too. I'm going to talk about that later, but I just want to mention it right away that most carbs that are refined will turn into pure sugar. So even a piece of whole grain bread can turn into more sugar than a Snickers bar. So just be aware of that. So when you try to feed your kids healthy, a whole grain piece of bread is not any healthier than a lot of the options out there. So we need to focus on whole foods. A good way to measure this is if you put the food out on the countertop, will it be moldy or ruined in 2, 3, 4 weeks? If it's not moldy or ruined, it usually doesn't have anything that feeds the good gut bacteria. It only feeds the bad gut bacteria. So if our gut is not doing well, it affects our brain, the mom's brain too, and the baby's brain, of course, and our whole health, and of course, our fetus. So when we are trying to either become pregnant or maybe we have been pregnant, it is so important to educate you about this and maybe reflect, is it something you need to target for you and for your kid? And one thing that a lot of kids are struggling so much with today is constipation. So I try to tell my kids, I have 3 kids, my oldest one is 11, my youngest one is 5, that a healthy poop should look like a hot dog. It's the easiest way for them to understand. It should be long, it should be soft, it should be smooth, it should be firm, so it shouldn't break too easily, but it should still be moist, and then it should be medium brown in color. And you can find this online if you want to go and try to see whatever poop your baby or your child or your own poop is. But ideally, you want to have poops that resemble something between 3 and 4. Okay. 5, 6, 7 is poop that is related to diarrhea. 1 and 2 is more constipation. We will talk more about the constipation, and we also will talk about how we can help the diarrhea part. But here's the most common issues why children today are struggling with constipation and what to do about it. So one big thing, and I had to put the grain here, it's referring to gluten, but a lot of grain can cause this issue as well, depending on your genetics and your microbiome and so on. But gluten in particular, and a lot of people doesn't know about this. My oldest son, if he had 1 piece of bread, he would be constipated for over 2 weeks. So if I gave him a piece of sandwich every other week, he would be constipated 24/7 all year round. And a lot of people say, well, my kids have no problem with gluten. And when we're looking into it, they have only tried to go gluten-free for a week or for a month. The thing is that gluten can stay in our system for up to 3 months. So if you really want to do a test, if you're gluten-free, if that helps your health, you need to stay off gluten for over 3 months. And you have to, and see how you're feeling. Then fiber. Some people are saying that fiber can help, but it can often cause even more constipation. I am one of those people that are struggling. If I get too much fiber, I get even more constipated. Vegetable oils. So I put corn oil here for demonstration. And then some people can react badly to milk protein, and lactose. It can also be that you are eating too little of healthy fats, too little butter or olive oil or coconut oil, and drinking too little water. So I wanted to mention also, what are the difference between probiotics and prebiotics? A lot of people today have heard about probiotics. We start to understand that they are bacteria that we need in our gut. And a lot of people are using supplementations to increase our probiotic, our bacteria levels in our gut. The problem with probiotics, it is like having a cage, and then you start putting in rabbits into the cage, and you keep on putting in more and more and more rabbits into the cage. But the thing is that, is someone letting the people in? Perfect. The thing is, if we don't feed the rabbits, they will die. So it doesn't matter how many rabbits you put into that cage unless you feed them. So what prebiotic is, instead of just putting in more rabbits, we're putting in the food for the rabbits. So the food for our gut bacteria, for the good bacteria. And what is happening when we're adding those good foods into the cage with our rabbits that we have, they can start to duplicate. And if we keep on feeding them every single day, the good food, they can duplicate a lot faster than you can keep on adding the rabbits to the cage. So we're going to talk a little, I'm going to address a little bit more about prebiotics and probiotics later. But first, I wanted to hand over the time to my awesome and lovely friend, Katie. And she's going to talk about the gut problems effect on children.
Thanks, Michaela. I always learn so much whenever you speak. And everything that Michaela explained and talked about was our reality, because my son went from being a really healthy child to really sick all of a sudden. It was like he led a normal life and then he got a virus. So again, touching on like when our gut health isn't right, it does lower our immune system. And after he got sick from that point on, our lives changed drastically. And what we've learned through that, so my son went through a period where he was vomiting constantly. It was diagnosed with what's called cyclical vomiting syndrome. And it's not just gut, but it's also brain. And so what Michaela was talking about, as far like they're so connected, and his autonomic nervous system was affected through this too. So we have a really bossy gut, and it sends 10 messages to the one message that our brain sends. So we're constantly like being told by our gut what to do. So if you're craving sweets or craving carbs, that's kind of an indicator that there's something going on in your gut. And that was my son. He craved carbs. Like he loved having a corn dog for school for lunch. And I used to joke, like, I think my son got sick because I sent too many corn dogs for him for lunch. And while there is truth to that, it was a perfect storm. There was like many things happening at once. I know now his vitamin D was super low. So he has gut problems, vitamin D is low, and that showed up in so many areas. So he had the vomiting problem, but then he wouldn't sleep either. So he went from being a child who slept great his whole life to me staying up with him when he was 8 years old until midnight because he could not fall asleep. And we just tried so hard. And I was like, what is even going on? Like, you used to be totally normal and now you're throwing up all the time and you're not sleeping, which of course is not healthy because our bodies need to have that rest and digest period. And he had neither of those. So in the midst of this, and this is something that very common that doctors will recommend, he did have a little bit of constipation, but not a lot. And so they're like, here, just have some Miralax. And I think that's just like the standard recommendation. So gave him Miralax. And what I know now is that Miralax does come in and strips the gut of some of that important bacteria, specifically butyrate. And so then my son developed a tic. So now we're dealing with vomiting constantly, not sleeping, has a tic. And I was like losing my mind. And so then the gastrointestinal specialist puts him on some acid reducers and other medications to help with his vomiting. So he gets on those, and his mental health is just like terrible, completely awful. And I'm just so incredibly worried about my son at this point. Like, what is going on? And so I look into the prescriptions that the doctors gave me, and one of them was a serotonin blocker. And one of the important parts of the gut is to help with serotonin and dopamine and GABA. And so those neurotransmitters are really important. And my son, who needs more serotonin, is on this prescription that's blocking it. And so I reached out to them and I was like, this is not going good. In fact, this has gone from bad to horrific. Like, I didn't think it could get worse, but it has. So we weaned him off of that. And then I found out that once I got him off of that, he started to get a little bit better, but he still wasn't right. Like, we were still dealing with the effects of the Miralax, and I had no idea how to help him at all. And he also developed anxiety. So our gut health plays so many roles. He also developed the nickname of the Hulk because his emotions were everywhere. He'd get angry so easily, and then he'd like have it in his hands, like he'd be like over nothing, right? And so when I was trying to find answers and everything, I ran into Michaela, and it's ironic that, like, even though I saw so many doctors and they did help in little ways here and there, they were all missing the nutritional element. They were missing the fact that all the supplements they were giving us were actually not being absorbed by my son, because his cells had turned from like a nice plump grape that we want our cells to be, to this raisin that was not letting those nutrients in, and was also like trapping the toxins in at the same time. So it was life-changing for us when we got the right nutritional tools, which were omega-3s and prebiotics. And as I was studying the prebiotics, that's when I learned that that is what helps grow the butyrate in the colon. And so I even was able to cut that supplement out. Actually, we were spending $500 a month on supplements. And he was doing like laser therapy, acupuncture. I mean, I was a desperate mom. I wanted my son back. And once we started the omega on him, like, his mental health got so much better because now I know he had this huge lack of fatty acids. And then also I was focusing on parts of the cell, but it helped strengthen the cell membrane. And so once his cell membrane opened up, he could absorb those nutrients that his stomach wasn't taking beforehand. And it could release the toxins better. And then the prebiotic was allowing him to be able to create more of the neurotransmitters to help regulate the serotonin and dopamine so that his emotions weren't so crazy. And so making these little changes completely changed our lives again. We went from like him being almost bedridden for 50% of 2022 to, in 2 days, a completely noticeable difference. And then me realizing he can be normal again. We can lead normal lives again. And that was back in November. And he is thriving today just with these simple changes, helping with the omega-3s and the prebiotic. So I think I'm giving it back to Michaela.
Thank you so much, Katie. And yes, take a picture, find Katie afterwards. She have an amazing blog with a lot of useful resources, but also the potty training course if people are wanting to potty train the kids. Okay, so healing the gut. I'm gonna speak very quickly, so feel free to take pictures on the slides I'm showing so that you can remember what to do. But we have to understand a lot of it stems from leaky gut, because leaky gut and having poor microbiome goes hand in hand. So, but we are now able to know what we're supposed to do in order to help and prevent leaky gut and help to improve the microbiome. So we have to look at both diet, environmental things, emotion, and then supplementation. So first, I want to say emotion. Your child may not want to poop. That might be the fact that they don't feel comfortable pooping into a diaper and pooping into their pants or whatever, that they have been holding it in for so long that even when you transfer them to a bathroom, they may still not feel comfortable pooping. So if that is the case, I would like for you to research EC. I've done it with 2 of my kids. I loved it. It's just early childhood potting, so I hardly never had a poop diaper with my babies, even from they were newborn. Then they might be scared. It might be a factor with the toilet that makes the kids scared. They might feel unsafe in a bathroom or knowing that it's going to flush afterwards. So we have to look into all of that, and then feeling the pressure from a parent that kind of demands them to poop or go to the bathroom. That can also be a struggle for them emotionally. Environmental is that a lot of children today sit still too much. They need to move. They need to go out. They need to run. They need to play. They need to be dirty. They need to get soil on them, so that they can get bacteria from other places as well. And a lot of kids have been exposed to too much plastic, medicines, and chemicals that are also contributing to destroying their gut. And they may get too little sun, because the sun and vitamin D, I'm going to talk about that a little bit, they have a bad... So this thing is, if we have poor gut health, we cannot activate the vitamin D that we're getting from the sun. So even if we're out playing and getting vitamin D, it comes in an inactive form and it needs to be activated in our gut. If our gut is not healthy, it may not be able to activate that vitamin D, which is causing our gut to become even sicker. And for it to be activated, we need magnesium. So they may get too little sun, but too little vitamin D. So your child needs sun and they need playtime, and parents also need this. Your microbiome also need this. So don't just send the kid out, come out and play with them. Run barefoot, breathe deep, exercise together, and have fun. When we're looking into diet, we need to cut out some of the processed foods. We cannot eat that much processed foods. I believe we can handle a little bit, but it should be 20-80, like 20% processed food, 80% whole foods, and not 80-20. Like having a salad 2 times a week is not good enough. Okay, so we need to cut out processed foods, vegetable oils. We need to cut out additives, gluten, and sugar, as I mentioned before. And then we need to add in more kefir, fermented foods, veggies, fruit, grass-fed organic beef and fish, and supplements with what you cannot eat. So if you are not able to eat enough of vitamins and minerals, you might need to supplement, because a lot before, when we were hunter-gatherers, a lot of the vitamins and minerals we got was from organs. And if we're not able to eat as much organs and we cannot compensate it with enough of volumes of fruit and veggies, and a lot of people may not even be able to digest fruit and veggies as good as other people, then we need to supplement with whatever we're not able to eat. So the supplementation we have to look into, if you're having poor gut health, or if your kid is having poor gut health, we need to look into extra vitamin D, and it needs to contain a full spectra of magnesium. What does that mean? You need to have different types of magnesium, and they should come from an all-natural form to be able to utilize the vitamin D so it can be activated. We need probiotic, okay? but you don't need it as a supplementation if you're able to eat it. So if you're able to eat kefir, fermented sauerkraut, I actually prefer it to be from food because a lot of supplements are not good enough. A lot of them come out before they're activated in your gut. A lot of it is dead even before you eat it because bacteria have very short lifespan. They only usually live 2 hours. So if it had been sitting on a countertop in the grocery store for 5 months, yeah, you can get the picture. Then prebiotic fibers. Prebiotic fibers, the food for gut bacteria. If you're struggling with your gut health, you need to supplement this. I would love for you to just be able to eat the food, but this is the fact. Just eating healthy foods will feed you what you need today. But if you're struggling with malnutrition, it is very hard to eat enough to not only have enough for today, but also be able to build up the depots that we need to build up again and help the good gut bacteria to have enough to, because our gut bacteria needs to become stronger and stronger and bigger so it can start pushing out all the bad gut bacteria that take up space in our gut. So this is something you need to supplement to also restore the butyric acid. Because it will not do that by itself. And that's what all science is showing, is that it's very hard to repair a leaky gut, and it's very hard to restore the mucosa. So we need to supplement with this. Then we need to supplement with some type of fish supplementation and omega-3, but omega-3 supplementation don't usually work. Almost no omega-3 supplementation works. You need to look for one that is high in DHA and high in EPA and have also combination with olive oil, so olive polyphenols. If you're not having that, it's like sending your money out in the ocean. Okay, so make sure that it's working. And if your kid is also struggling with sleep, mood, anxiety, depression, you should do everything you need to do for the gut health, but you should also add a supplementation with saffron that's also containing magnesium and iodine. And it needs to be a high quality one, and preferably someone that have been tested scientifically. The one I am using, and I know Katie's son is using, and we are actually all using it. We have double-blinded studies behind it. It's very clean, very effective, and everyone that are using it loves it. So my recommendations is, if you want to look into more, if you need omega-3 for you or your child, the stats are today that 99% of American population is omega-3 deficient, which is causing us to have too much low-graded inflammation. Too much low-graded inflammation in our gut is causing us to have bad gut bacteria. You can start seeing the circle of like, we cannot just do one thing. We need to target it as a whole. Our whole body needs to have better circumstances to function better. But if you do the things that are needed, then you can also become a lot healthier and change your status on a cellular level. If you need help and support with this, I have lots of education in my Facebook group, Omega-3 We Share Experiences, where we measure before and after. And that was what I wanted to say. So Gigette, back to you. And you need to unmute yourself. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So just as Katie mentioned, that every time that you have a presentation or something, I learned something new. Just like today, my takeaway was about the vitamin D not being absorbed in the stomach unless I have magnesium. I learned that, so thank you very much. So, and I thank you for your help. If we could go ahead and switch to the next slide, please.
Yes, one more thing. All these lovely ladies and whoever have invited you, they can help with calculating right dosages and come with personal recommendations. If you feel like you are done trying to find what is best yourself, what we have really works, and we have testimonials after testimonials after testimonials on how amazing this is. And my own healing story is making it very easy for me to be very excited about these products, because it also gave my own health back. So anyway, get in contact with the person that have invited you and they will be able to help you.